I'm Mr. James,
And I'm Mr. Ritchie.
and we are the
the Educators.
Educators. And happy American Thanksgiving tomorrow, everybody.
Right.
Or is it happy? This is the new American Thanksgiving. It is November 25th, and it is Wednesday because Thursday is going to be the American Thanksgiving. And
Right.
we're not going to talk about celebrating anything, but we are going to talk about what's going on in our state.
That's right, because we are still in the middle of a pandemic, even though we don't want to be. In Maine, we've had a weekly increase of 1,436.
Wow.
That is still trending upward, as it has been for the last 6, 7, 8 weeks. And we are 100 or more than 100 over the increase from last week. So still climbing sharper than ever. The United States did go up again, another 120,000 more than the increase from the previous week. So a total weekly increase of 1,228,650. So that's 120,000 more of an increase than the previous week. So we're still that it's not going like this. It is still curving.
Yeah.
That line is still curving, or the graph is still curving upward. In the world, the world has not had as much of an increase as we have seen here in our neck of the woods. 3.9 million, which is pretty much the same from last week. About looks like 30,000. 30,000 of an increase. So still increasing, but not at as steep of a curve as America or Maine in general. But so that means that we are still right in the middle of this thing with no end in sight. We'll talk about a couple of things in the future here, but like, a couple of vaccines on the way, but still very far away from making things normal.
Yeah, and it was like just today. I mean, yesterday we had probably our largest event ever. We had 255 cases, I believe. That was crazy. Today was 228 cases. And I mean, when it began, the numbers were like really low.
Yeah.
I mean, it was below 100, I thought, for like ever. And to get our first 200 was like 2 weeks ago or something. And now it's just like every day is around that. They said 9 days we've had of it being over 200. And
usually around here too, we have like, usually it's no new deaths, maybe one new death, a couple new deaths. And yesterday it was 12.
Yeah.
And so, that's pretty shocking increase as well.
The scary thing, and I posted this to our notes, was that the New York Post has released something that said almost 5 million Americans travel by plane before Thanksgiving. And this is them going before Thanksgiving so they can be in a place for Thanksgiving. And that's
just crazy to me.
Yeah. And so it's all of this news of like, hey, stay home, don't do this, don't go there. You can only think that a lot of these people were actually going towards something, to visit somebody for Thanksgiving and hopefully not spread something. Like we've had students that weren't in school.
I know.
Where did they go? Oh, this person's in West Virginia or this other state. And you're like, oh, really? Great.
Or it might end up like one of my classes. I had a student that said, I said, oh, hey, where's this student? And a girl just said, oh, he's got COVID. And I was like, oh.
Yeah.
Okay. Like,
it's okay.
I didn't hear that, but, thanks. He was here last week, so that's interesting. But, you never know if the kids are telling the truth or, what the situation is.
Well, and sometimes when we have a problem with, are they telling us the truth? Are we getting everything for what's happening? Are we understanding that? Because I feel like maybe not everything is addressed, our entire school is not addressed all the time with things that are happening, and we just kind of keep an eye out who's walking out of the school when school's not over, and are they collecting their own kids? That's usually the thing. You see them walk.
Yeah,
Okay.
we got to keep our own eyes out. We kind of have like a communication system. Basically, we're like looking out. At this point, we've got to keep our our own information going, because sometimes, like you said, there's a delay sometimes in communication, and sometimes you don't know exactly what's going on. Like if students have been confirmed positive, but they weren't sent home from school, does that automatically feed down into us?
Yeah.
And us being UA teachers, see significantly more students than the average staff member that works in that school. And luckily in our school, we've done a very good job where,
Oh yeah.
two of the four of us have had to quarantine, but it wasn't either you or I,
Yeah.
but
No. Not
but
yet.
it's that's not that bad for as many kids as we see. That's pretty good odds. But you wonder, that, like that girl said that, oh, he's not in school right now because he's got the COVID. I'm like, okay, like I didn't hear about this. Nobody said, oh, a student has it but hasn't been in school for a week. So there is always this information vacuum when there's like a major event like this going on, because you have people that are inclined to, and I'm not saying this is happening for sure, but it just, everyone has the feeling like there's this inclination to not mention it if someone gets it, because we don't want to make a big scene and get in the newspaper and all that stuff. But like, so you never know if that's what's going on, or if we're just really lucky and we.
Yeah, I know. You don't want to be told late and then be like, oh, wow, that's the one day I decided to reach my hand into a bag of chips and not wash them 17 times before. I might have used, and it's not, I'm not saying I ever did that. I found a way to eat everything now without even touching it, but I've always been that way anyways, because sort of a germaphobe anyways. But it's like, you will second guess yourself at every single thing you did. Like, did I just, after I took my gloves off, did I use enough hand sanitizer? Did I scrub long enough? Did I do this?
Yeah.
Can I touch my desk and not wash it?
So it's every time, like when I go to eat, whether it's like those the bada bean bada booms that we found. And so it's a little package of fava beans, and rip it open, dump it in the hand, and I'm like, did I did.
I cut it with scissors, make a little edge, and I'm just like, boom, just like that.
Yeah. And then so when I use the scissors, I'm like, what did I use the scissors on last time? Like thinking about it, got to use the wipes real quick, and like I just everything, cross contamination is a really, really hard thing to avoid. At least in the mind, because you're thinking everything touches everything else. You can't.
Meanwhile, there's kids coming into your class, pulling their mask down, wiping their face and their nose with their hand, and putting their mask back up. And you go,
yes.
There's so many.
And they stay there in class with their hands under their mask.
Yeah, there's like five. Like I can notice 5 or 6 things that are completely wrong with that, and I can address one, because I have no time to stop and derail the entire class. I can tell you, put your mask back on, don't touch your face, but you can't talk about how many other things are wrong with that. And you just hope, please don't get that.
Same thing here, in class. I'm like, you see there's a kid with you never know if they're picking their nose, if they're like, wiggling a loose tooth, all the things that a normal, typically developing kid would do in your class on any given day. They're still trying to do that stuff with the masks. It's like you try to catch it, but obviously the kids are trying to do it without getting without people seeing them. And I just remind them constantly, make sure to keep that over your nose and your mouth. And like that's usually all I have to say, and to avoid embarrassment, they'll usually like try a little harder. But sometimes there are either special needs kids or behavioral kids that, like, I have things that are taped. Yeah. And it's like they play with the tape, and it's like, do you know who touched that last? And they're like, no. And I'm like, well, me neither. So shouldn't you not, not touch these things? Because you're also got your hand in your mask and like thinking about all these things. And so it's a lot to think about. And, I'm glad that we have this little break to get away from all of that cleaning. I mean, still, we keep our homes clean, but, not to the level where we
Yeah,
have
we're
to keep our
afraid to sit
classrooms.
down. Like every step we take is basically choreographed, basically to get
Yeah.
around our classrooms. We second guess everything. We go over things multiple times. It is
Yep.
interesting that we get to step back from this and not have to think about that for just a little while, because it's still coming up. But I don't know. It's yeah. This is we've been under
What a
this
crazy time.
since March, and
Yeah.
it could have
We've been
been
taking
longer.
it serious since March too. It wasn't like you and I, when it first came out, didn't believe the news. And for some people, it's okay if that's happened to you, where you didn't believe it at first, you changed your mind based on new information. That's great.
Yeah.
But you and I were kind of keyed in on this. I mean, I was keyed in on it in January when it affected Lunar New Year celebrations, and ever since then, it's been an interesting ride. And us being right in the middle of it at a public school is a pretty interesting front row seat to the response and how to make it work with modern life. So
Yeah. Definitely don't
yeah. So what do you think? Let's get talking about some science in the
say some
news.
science. So yeah, definitely. We're gonna come back to this, everybody. We're gonna come back to this because we were born
We'll
out of
always come back to COVID.
we were born out of this, and unfortunately,
Yeah.
it's gonna be something we have to keep hitting on. Someday, maybe not, but then there's gonna be something else.
Yeah.
So that's what we're about: education. So education
Absolutely.
always starts with science. The fact of educating yourself is a research method of some sort. So science is what that is called: research, looking after things. It's science is a verb. It's not a noun. So
Observing the world and using that to create better models in your head, or better assumptions, being curious in general. Like I tell the kids, like the natural scientist walks out and wonders what's above the clouds, and the non-scientist walks out and just says, like, everything that I care about is between the sky and the earth, and that's it.
So first thing in the news, and this is straight out of like neuroscience and stuff like that. And this is actually from a publication called Nature Neuroscience, is that lonely brains crave people like hungry brains crave food. So
I believe it.
They mentioned that people who spend a day being completely isolated, and this is one of their experiments, from anyone, their brains perked up at the sight of a social gathering, which is similar to somebody they may have starved for a while or has fasted, sees food, and all of a sudden they're, wow, I'm excited. I really need that. And it's like a survival thing, basically. So they're finding that, literally people do need, and this is funny that we're mentioning this because we're both introverts, and we can honestly say to you, like, do we really need people? Do we need people? I guess on some level.
I had to take a real hard look at it a few times, but especially in my younger state, I was definitely a more social introvert. Like during the entire week would be introverted in my own apartment, in my room, locked away, go to work, come back, all that. But on the weekend, I'd save it up and go out and seek these, social interactions. Of course, that's gotten less as I grow older, but like, for instance, when we went into lockdown the first time, and I literally didn't really see anybody for the first 2.5 months, we didn't have the podcast yet.
Yeah.
I had no outlet. I did have that come back, and it was sort of like, I want to play a show.
Yeah.
I want to play a rock and roll show. We're in like one of those sweaty, humid places where it's just lots of people like dancing and rocking out. And it's like, wow, I may never get to do that for, maybe not ever, but like for a very long time. And it made me crave more, especially because I couldn't have it, that social interaction of it. I just wanted to go to a bar and with some friends and hang out. And it's like, no, that's like literally the worst place to be.
No, I
So
know.
I
And me,
definitely believe it.
I've been in
I
those
mean,
situations where I've been in those sweaty bars and I'm like, I don't want to be touched by anybody. I'm like, this place is gross. The sound is bad. I can't
yeah,
get my guitar tone right. For some reason, every song has got different levels and no one's touching anything, or are they? Yeah. But at the same time, I like
yeah,
that it's received well, maybe a certain
yeah.
song or whatever, and people end up liking it. You're just hoping that they like it until you have to actually stop it, and then they don't make you keep doing it. I mean, I played a show where I've had to do so many encores that I'm like, we need to leave.
Yeah.
Like the bar is shutting down.
Yeah.
It's really late. It's like 1 a.m. We need to leave. I want to get out of here. Okay, I'm done. My fingers are jelly. I can't play anymore. 4 hours
Every
is way too
every
much.
encore I've ever played was a mess. It was
Yeah.
like we put our best songs in the set list. And so when it came time for an encore, people were like asking for an encore. We're like looking at each other like, you want to try that thing that we kind of knew? And
Yeah.
like, yeah, or this old cover, like, yeah, let's try that. And like, just yeah, definitely no. But I mean, even with that, it's just like a certain experience when you get a crowd moving. And food I crave multiple times a day. I definitely don't crave people as often as food, but
Yeah.
I could say that sometimes perhaps if I haven't seen people in a while, perhaps I could
I
crave.
think as educators, we probably crave having a captive audience of students
I love
listening to
a
us.
captive audience.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yep.
So that's probably what we're getting that fix already, and we're just basically adults that don't really want to see other adults, especially if we're making money around them.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's fair. That's
I
a
don't know.
fair.
If it's like a social thing, maybe that's different, but that's some
Yeah.
people. And no, give me a book. I'll take a book any day. So
Yep.
next item, the FDA has approved the first drug to treat the rapid aging disease progeria. And this, if
What?
you haven't seen that, these are, so imagine children that look like older, the
What
elderly.
a terrible disease! Like, oh, that first time I ever heard of that. It is so sad because like these people literally just go through life at an incredibly accelerated rate. They die early, very early,
Yeah.
and but yeah, it's like they literally age or something. Like I have never looked into it, but it's basically that their bodies age. They tend to go through these same aging stages just faster. And wow, so a drug that can treat that kind of seems to, at least perhaps on the Venn diagram, kind of overlap with
Oh yeah.
general aging, maybe. And something that we talk about often on this show is that we are transhumanists looking for the next step in human evolution. And if a drug can treat a disease like progeria, then there might be other implications, or at least science around that
Yeah.
could benefit human
I
longevity.
just feel like the looking into all these things, we have, I mean, the world, we're filled with diseases, viruses, bacteria, all of this stuff that can affect humans. And finding something to cure this, to help prevent these things, is definitely going to help us do anything we want towards living longer. I mean, it's going to help towards any of that. So finding something, oh, this is great for this, some other scientist is going to go, wait a minute, we should try this on that. Like some medicines that we have today. I mean, and I'll take one that I don't want to go into detail talking about, but Viagra is used basically for erectile dysfunction, and yet Viagra is great at lowering triglycerides and blood pressure, and it's great for that. And that was its original intent. I think it was a heart medication, but it had this side effect of that. And so they're like, wait a minute,
Yeah.
that's going to make us more money if we sell it like that, because that's going to, there's
wow.
the adult male population is going to go crazy over that. So
Right.
yeah, my father took it, I guess, for a triglyceride. He says it lowered his triglycerides, and they figured that out. So
That's very interesting.
And he has great health. He just always has had high triglycerides for some reason. But I mean, he's gone off
And
a
it'll
lot
also
of
help
animal
your
food.
heart from the increased cardio, you know.
Yeah, but it's just that interesting thing. But yeah,
Yep.
it's always, and with this next news thing, and I added this not from my normal channel, but this is something I heard from another podcast that happened last week, last Wednesday, which was the Skeptic's Guide to the Universe, which let me just say is the one that has convinced me to start my own podcast. I've wanted to for the past, whatever, 12, 15 years. I've been listening to them. And this one says they mention the CRISPR-Cas9 genome editing, which is a tool that everyone should now understand, as using targeted lipid nanoparticles for cancer therapy. And they found this improvement of like 30% improvement in life expectancy, or just as far as the cancer going away with that. And they said this is huge if this has worked out really well. They're still going through, this is from a journal article, but they're still going through tests with this. And if we can use CRISPR-Cas9 for that, wow. And CRISPR, I think we might have talked about another show, something that basically is a way to edit genes and make them do something different. And you have to find a way to insert it into certain things. And I guess with this one, lipids or fats, they found a way to do this and to insert into cancer and basically kill the cancer.
It has so many possibilities, and CRISPR is something that I think has been used in the development of the vaccines for the coronavirus that I know about. And my wife is an amateur like CRISPR enthusiast, you know, and so yeah, she likes to follow up on the science behind it, and she could probably lead a whole talk on it. But it is incredibly promising. She's been reading about it and sharing her knowledge about it for the last 10 years. And she works as of right now, she works in healthcare, and the possibilities of it are they seem kind of endless, you know, but you never know, you know, the side effects. We haven't really put this stuff out, but as of right now, it seems like a pretty safe, pretty awesome thing that in the future could really help solve a lot of really tough diseases, and maybe even the coronavirus. So that's pretty awesome.
And I think this is one of those wave of the future things where it seems endless. We just need a lot more money towards this and more people using it. And I guess it's pretty I mean, from what I've heard before with different studies, they said it's pretty easy to use as far as like there's certain, I don't know if it's kits or whatever, but it's scientists can use this fairly readily on something, and it's just they get better at how they know how to use it and its function for that. So last science news: immunity to COVID-19 may persist 6 months or more. So this flies in against what we've heard previously. I think that it lasted maybe at most 6 months or less. If you basically got this, if your immunity wouldn't last and you'd be able to get it again, because we've heard people that did that.
It's still unfortunate to hear. You want to hear like once you get it, you're immune for probably life. The rest of your life, like chicken pox or something like that. Like that's what you want to hear. You know, chicken pox was legit. Like everybody was told, once you get it, don't worry, you're never gonna get it again. We grew up, and then all of a sudden we realized, oh, shingles is a thing that we could really get that. Oh, that's terrible. Oh, now they have a vaccine for it, but before I could take it, back in the day, like, well, all right. Well, so here with COVID, it's really unfortunate that it does taper off after 6 months. So it really kind of, it should funnel us into a systematic vaccination campaign, because it goes to show that we're going to have to add this to our vaccination schedule. And I'm perfectly fine with it. Especially after talking, like I mentioned before, my wife loves to talk about CRISPR, and she knows all about the vaccines that are coming out. And after her, she put her seal of approval on them. So I'll be in line as soon as they're available. Unfortunately, they won't be available to us for a little while. I think they're going to be getting them out other places. But, you know, I think that basically 6 months, if not longer. I mean, we can all maybe bank on 6 months. All right, I got it. I was asymptomatic or something, but I got a test positive.
Yeah.
All right, for 6 months, I can live my life a little more freer. As I'm afraid of what people's gonna.
Yeah, I'm not taking the mask off. I'm not gonna. Still not gonna put my. I'm never gonna do that. I wash my hands a million times in my own house. I still will not touch my tongue with my finger. I'm not gonna do that. Sorry.
You know, the coronavirus does die when it's in your stomach. However, there's some, like, I think there's mucus glands that, like, if it.
I mean, the thing is that I know where this finger's been,
yeah.
and I don't trust it. I still don't trust it. I don't trust anything on the outside of my body. Even though I just, I literally just stepped out of the shower like an hour ago. So.
Yeah, well, it was earlier for me, but I agree. Like they used to call me a germaphobe when I was working with the special needs children. But the truth is that they are they're a population that is statistically less likely to have all of their vaccinations. And I knew that, there's a very likelihood that, I was going to be exposed, especially because I was with behavioral kids that hit, bite, scratch, spit, worse, and so you have to be really aware of it. They called me germaphobe, the previous year. The next year there's a pandemic, so I wonder what they all think now.
I wish germaphobe would come here and give us some tips.
That's right, Mr. Ritchie knew what was going on. Like, I see what.
Let's go visit his science room and learn more about the science.
Yeah, exactly. Like, just wipe down all the touch surfaces, stuff that we're doing now. But no, I definitely am looking forward to having some sort of sense of calm that, all right, I'm either immune, like, I'd be interested to see, I'd love to take the test to see if I did have it, if I've got the antibodies, and I'll give myself a few months or whatever. Like, great, like, that's a little bit of pressure off for me, but I'm still going to wear my mask, do everything the same way at work, at home, all that stuff. But just at least personally, I know that it'd be a little less rough if I did get it, again, or get exposed to it again. But it really doesn't, it's not going to change much. It's not going to change much until we get this vaccine available, vaccine schedule that's viable, and have it in every grocery store like the flu shot is.
Yeah. So this is leading us up to our main theme for this podcast, which is the new American Thanksgiving. And
tomorrow's Turkey Day.
Yeah. So I'm not saying everyone celebrates this, and I'm not saying, we were laughing previously prior to this turning on. Oh, did I just touch my face? Don't worry, it's just my side of my nose.
Right.
I'll wash my hand after, or in my face. No, I mentioned, we talked about celebrating, and I said, I don't think I celebrate anything. Like, if someone says celebrate, and I see people jumping up and down, yay, happy, I don't think I've ever done that. I don't celebrate anything.
I used to when I was a kid, but I'm right there with you.
I don't really celebrate. I may have to go through the motions of something because it's a tradition that maybe family members might do and I have to show up to, but
for you and I,
I'm not happily celebrating.
Let's be honest here. For you and I, it's a social obligation. Like, it's just the crowd that we happen to hang out with, which is our significant others and our children, happen to prefer this tradition, filled calendar with these dates that are obligatory, that we dress up a certain way or put certain things on the wall. And, for many years, I've said the same thing. I'm riding through it and just like, at least once you have a kid, you kind of experience the magic a little bit, like you live through their eyes, and remember when you were a kid. Yeah, there was a sense of magic to it. But now it's just sort of like, I gotta go dig that box out of the basement and put the tree
I'm the
up,
same way with birthdays. I could care less about my birthday at all. I do not really like receiving gifts. I mean, unless it's Amazon and sponsors. So guys, I really would love to have the highest end wearables so I can quantify myself. But
this one's working good. But I get it.
But it's that idea that whatever. Like it's
Yeah.
another day. Listen, I've got a schedule. I've got to wake up at 5:30, do the workout. I've got to make the smoothie. I've got to do this and do that.
So you
Is
waking up
it?
at 5:30?
Yeah,
So
I've been
I
waking
thought it
up at
was
5:30 now.
6.
It was
I thought it was.
6, then it became 5:30 because I found that having a little bit more time in the morning.
That's awesome for you. Good for you. But
But
no,
yeah,
I'm same way. It's like I think that I mean ultimately in my brain, there's still a part of me that says we would all be better off if we weren't tied to these traditions.
yeah,
However, I get that there's a difference of opinion there, and I won't argue with someone about the importance of their tradition. I'll never do that, you know. However, it's just because of my upbringing and my culture. That's my opinion. Is that we would do better off if we could just like not worry about it. But it's here. Thanksgiving is something, in the what makes it harder for me is that these traditions are rooted in these events that didn't happen, or these events that are so misconstrued from their original
oh yeah,
structure that like it's difficult for me. So some people don't worry about like the first Thanksgiving was certainly not this ultra peaceful, super happy day, warm day where they all sat out on picnic tables and shared, their harvest and all this. But like most people understand that that's not true. And for me, I'm one of the people that it makes it hard for me to celebrate after that. Once you realize the real history of America and, harvest season and,
I mean,
all
all of
that.
them. I think Easter is got some marn to it, or and St.
Well,
Patrick's Day and stuff like that. Is so many.
Easter is a pagan fertility festival that,
Yeah,
has been turned in because of the story of Jesus waking up 3 days after his death. And it's like, but how do you tie that in with the rabbit? Like, I don't.
oh yeah. Thanksgiving. So as a music teacher, I usually I show students, and prior when we could actually sing, I would play on the piano Jingle Bells, which was written for Thanksgiving. That's when that was written.
No
It was
way.
not written for Christmas or
I was
anything
gonna
happening
ask you.
December. It was written for Thanksgiving. And in the lyrics, it has nothing to do with anything Christmas related for those that
No,
celebrate Christmas. It's written about going to visit somebody on a sleigh,
in
basically.
winter and
Yeah,
like
and it's
yeah.
winter and it's snowy out. It's Thanksgiving, and it says that if you look it up, written for Thanksgiving.
I was
So
gonna ask if there was Thanksgiving themed music other than like, traditional, Charlie Brown stuff or whatever,
yeah,
but like, yeah, it's like pilgrims and music. I mean, was there music with the pilgrims?
yeah. I mean, they feel if you take some medieval music, Renaissance sort of thing,
Right,
I
still carried over,
I think they would have brought that over from England and stuff like that in Europe,
yeah,
anyways, because the medieval Renaissance
but they weren't bringing their
times
like
were.
whatever their proto pianos, whatever that was that they had. But
Yeah, they
like,
probably have some brought a clavichord over and stuff like that,
yeah,
and then before the piano, the modern piano came from clavichord and the pianoforte and stuff like that. But yeah,
yeah.
we've kind of construed things. We've got things messed up, and then you wonder what has been marketed to us for specific times. Why it's like this because of it works better on this date, so we're making it this date, and
Right.
this works better
Even
to get us,
even
so
the
let's sell
Fourth
it
of
like that.
July, even the 4th of July is
Yep,
a lie. It was like the second or something, I think,
yep.
that they actually signed the Declaration. Why? Why can't we just? I don't understand. I would have so much more. I would probably have legitimate enthusiasm for most of these holidays if it was, accurate and real tradition. Like
Yep.
we've been doing this for 300 years. Let's keep it going. But so I mean, here we are now in our new American Thanksgiving, and
Yep.
so how should we be celebrating this year? I mean, obviously it's going to be different, but like, let's talk about that. How should we be celebrating on this most ridiculous Thanksgiving since 1918, basically?
Yep. Well, definitely, like you mentioned, listen to the professionals.
Yeah,
We have to make sure that everyone's basically saying, please don't meet. please don't meet. If you have
Yeah.
to, and we're saying, like we're already mentioning to everybody, you don't have to. You absolutely do not have to follow this tradition. To us,
You don't.
it's an
Yes.
obligation that you do not have to follow. Whatever. Talk to people, Zoom with them on that day, but every day. If you want to connect with somebody, connect with humans
Yep.
any day. It's just something that was created that is probably not specifically for this date. That's just people happen to celebrate as a tradition. And professionals mentioned wear a mask, of course,
Yeah.
when you're out, and stay apart. Get tested. Probably don't grab into the same chip bag as somebody else if you're with next. I mean, that's the whole thing. Like,
Yeah.
maybe you're not even trusting the food that someone makes. I mean,
Well, here's the thing: if you are going to family, like let's say you're going to meet up with 7 family members, which I think around here is like the max, or you're supposed to, or something, 7 family members. You go and reach that shared ladle for the mashed potatoes. You touch that ladle. Are you sanitizing and washing your hands before you actually consume your food? Because if you grab that biscuit right after you grab that ladle, and then you consume that, and you happen to be unlucky, and the virus touches a mucus gland somewhere and happens to be taken into your bloodstream, boom, you've got it. Like, and now you're going to spread it, even if you don't have symptoms. Or like, you go into your grandma's house. Does your grandma have adequate ventilation? Probably not. Even most people with forced hot air as a heater, a source, there's not really filtration in the forced hot air system. Perhaps the hot air going through the furnace would kill the virus as it's circulating through the house, but like, there's not any tests. There's not science that has shown that yet. But like, in my home, we don't have forced hot air. We have baseboard heating, like a lot of places do. And in that case, it's all recycled air. There's nothing except for natural drafts through windows that is adding new fresh air to the environment. So like, if you're all eating dinner in one room, you are sharing air. And especially when you go to eat, that mask is off, everyone's mask is off, we're talking, we're chatting. It's literally the worst time of year. It's literally the worst holiday, really, to have in the middle of a pandemic, at the worst time of year, in the winter, with cold weather, like raining. It's raining and cold weather out right now, at least in our neck of the woods. So it's literally the worst time possible.
Like we have an increase happening, and then, hey, we have this tradition that most people find an obligation to go through with, and let's make the weather extra cold and rainy so everyone stays inside.
Yeah, exactly. And for most of my life, we've already talked about it, but for most of my life, this was an obligation. And it's sort of like a forced obligation on many introverts, where it's like, you need to come into this like, and depending on where you live, depending on like your socioeconomical status, I'll be honest, I'll tell you a story about me. Every time that I have to go to a family member's house, I have to walk in, and there's a different air quality in the home. There's different smells. You can smell the difference in air quality sometimes. And I don't come from a rich background, so I won't go into more detail, but it's just sort of one of those things. Well,
you're not smelling lavender and like lemons and stuff like that.
Yeah, you're not smelling granite, like, freshly cut granite countertops and all this stuff. It's 70s shag carpet and panel board on the wall. And so like, this year it's even worse. It's like, you go into someone's home like that, and you are sharing their air. Whatever they've been into recently, it's in the air. So let's think about logic versus tradition here. And in 2020, can we start putting logic above tradition? Like, it's just really what we've got to do this year. And I know a lot of people won't. And hey, even if you're listening to this and you're like, you know what, I'm gonna go have my Thanksgiving meal with my family if I want to, tell us why in the comments here. Like, we'd love to talk.
Enjoy, I guess, eating your meat. Murderer. But I'm not going to go into that. I'm not going into that. Okay, everybody, I'm not going into that.
But again, if we have to celebrate, Listen to the professionals. Stay distant as far as you can. Stay for a short amount of time. Remember, exposure is being within 6 feet of someone for 15 minutes or more. So keep it brief. Wear a mask at all times if possible. And don't go to a place with lots of people. Keep the numbers low wherever you are. That's about all we can do other than just stay home. Stay home. Don't travel. Don't go out. Just stay home and prepare for the next shutdown so that you're not looking for toilet paper in a month. All right. So
now let's talk about, I mean, what should we be thankful for this year? Because 2020 was kind of a wash. So
it was tough. It was all right for me because it provided different opportunities in a way to slow down a little bit. And you know, I was really hopeful for a chance to slow down. I know some people have had a very opposite situation where perhaps they lost their job, which certainly creates chaos. And I don't want to make light of that. But because of, you know, I work in public education, my wife works in healthcare, you know, in this house, we've been working, you know, for the pandemic, you know, and it's just, you know, we've made good moves. We've done all right. So, I mean, depending on your situation, at least at home, some of us have some things to celebrate, and we shouldn't be embarrassed or upset that we have some things to celebrate after 2020. When you triumph over adversity, there's always a chance to celebrate. And you know, I think for us, we have this podcast. That's a nice thing for us to celebrate. You know, that's what I've been thinking about. That you know, 2020 has been strange. It's been unfortunate, but there's been some good news, and I've got my job, which is something that a lot of people are saying, you know, is something to be thankful for this year. So
yeah, I think definitely that. I think just the way the things are working out as far as smaller class size, that's great for the job, having the job. Yes, a lot of gigs have lost. I saw them just fall by the wayside, March, April, May.
Yeah, I mean, you and me both. Like, this was the year we were going to bring back the band, and we're going to get out there, and no.
Just,
but
you know, what I could do was great. Whatever I could have done was good enough to just keep my name out there, I guess. And I was just part of a ballet last weekend. It was recorded. And we came in separate different parts and did our little thing and stuff like that in front of a camera crew that was very limited in a place that was in front of no audience whatsoever. So we'll see how that happens. They're taking 6 months to edit the video. So
yeah,
but yeah, it's just one of those things where I think we have a couple things happening in America that are going to be hopefully solving this. I think everyone got together for a vaccine is one thing.
They're in sight. And you know, they're not here right now, but they're in sight. There's been at least a notable shift towards science with just at least the election.
Yeah.
You know, it's an entirely different tone. You know, it's hard to say that the pandemic has not had a giant influence on the election, and the party that won, party that won the presidency, at least, is the party that tends to trust scientists and has stated in their, you know, acceptance speech, basically, that we're going to return to a science-based approach to the coronavirus versus, I mean, I don't know what the other method was other than denial, but, you know, so there's some potential, some really good positive indicators of the future. And one thing that we can always remember is that the bad days give measure to the good. There's no way for us to understand what good feels like without having understood what bad feels like. And so if anything, you know, we can just look at 2020. It's a nice even number for us to remember for the rest of our lives and just say, yeah, back in 2020, this is what it was. Like 20 years from now will happen. 50 years from now,
like a Great Depression or whatever like that, or living through the flu epidemic, you know, just knowing that. And we're hoping because of what we mentioned earlier about so many people flying out, that this does not become a next super spreader event.
It has a potential to be a historic, and almost like it has the potential, unfortunately, to be a tale of hubris
Yeah.
going forward for like the rest of like it's like a Titanic lesson where the engineers of the Titanic gloated and said, this ship is unsinkable, no way, no how, it is the best ship ever made on its maiden voyage, hits an iceberg, sinks all the way to the bottom of the ocean. So this year is, and I have to mention this, so it's like, you know, a Thanksgiving where we spread disease is kind of a fitting tribute to what the original Thanksgiving perhaps was about, because there's a long history in America of Europeans giving away, European-based heritage people giving away their local diseases to the or their diseases to the local public or a local population. And so here we are in America where like this could be one of those events where like the rest of the world says, America, what are you doing? You've got all this reason for us to not you know, for you to not spread this disease. But you know, we're gonna hope for the best. And will people be able to resist the risk? Some people are just willing to risk it all for like we mentioned earlier in this this show, that, you know, our human brain craves social experiences like food sometimes. And I think that right now maybe some of those people are experiencing those cravings, and unfortunately I don't think that it's the right idea to listen to the craving and give in. And
it's unfortunate that Thanksgiving represents those two cravings, both the social gathering and the food. And sometimes the food that a certain person's, a food someone's family makes, because maybe that person doesn't cook and they're like, oh, my grandmother's whatever. And that's the thing. So we're gonna end this in about 2 minutes. But what I want to give you is 1 minute. What is your prediction for the rest of 2020?
Oh, rest of 2020 is definitely going to be all right. I'm going to put my optimist hat on right now. I'm going to say
it's a pretty small hat.
Yeah, it's a you know. I'm going to put my optimist hat on and say that I think that, and this is an optimist, we're going to have a reckoning, all right, over the next 3 months, 4 months into spring, where massive numbers, we're going to double the amount of deaths in this country in just a few months, where I think that we're going to see unequivocally that the professionals and the medical professionals and the scientists were absolutely correct. They absolutely called this. We're going to just have a rough winter. People will understand it. We might have this return to science, especially after January, into the spring. And we might see a resurgence of people saying, okay, let's listen to professionals. And I'm thinking, I'm putting my optimist hat on, and I'm thinking that the 2021 will be a peaceful year of rebuilding, restructuring, you know, and coming back together. So that's going to be my prediction. When I look at this episode next year, I want to look back and be like, you know what, I had that optimist hat on. But what's your thoughts? So what do you
my
think?
hat is just as large as yours. I think I can put it in the back right here.
Yeah.
I think the same thing. I think actually that it is going to explode, as far as we're going to have a lot more cases, and it's going to probably peak around the turn of the year. I think it's going to keep going. I think what's going to happen is we're going to realize we're going to have some different restrictions, and we're going to find a way so businesses can keep doing what they do, and that people can keep working. But I also think in the next 5 to 10 years, businesses that we see, like banks, like schools in person, things like that, are going to be shifting. I think we're realizing that this is going to be the beginning of a number of possible different pandemics and things that can happen. and things are going to change all over the world as far as like what we can do. You go to an ATM machine, it's going to wash your hands before you touch the buttons and after, and it's going to do that somehow. We're going to give all these different this technology coming out of this to be germaphobes, and we're basically going to have to protect everybody. I think the optimistic part of that is that we're going to be able to quantify everything that happens in our lives much easier, and the technology is going to be cheaper, and it's going to be expected. So if you don't actually have the technology to quantify yourself, people are going to look at like, what are you doing? Like, how can you exist without knowing your skin temperature? How can you exist not knowing that, the fluctuations in your Krebs cycle? And you're like, what are you talking about? Krebs cycle is something happens in the mitochondria. Like, what if just certain things like that? Like, you're going to know so much about yourself, and it's just going to help you even more to make better decisions. But at the same time, you're going to be paranoid and wake up in the middle of the night screaming. And hey, we're moving towards the future. We're going in that direction. Our brains need to find more science. Technology needs to evolve. We need to evolve. You have to understand it's going to happen. You need to read the news. Be plugged in, or someone else is going to plug you in.
Yep. And read the news with the ability to analyze and determine what is factual versus fiction.
Yeah.
And as long as you understand scientific consensus, you can usually understand what's fact and fiction. So yeah. I'm looking forward to that future as well.
Well, enjoy your American Thanksgiving, Americans, and everybody else. Look in on what we're doing. And keep your thoughts with us, I guess, how some people say it. Well, I'm Mr. James. I'm Mr. James.
Mr. Ritchie.
And we are
the educators.
Have a good night.